There is a specific kind of pain that doesn't have a clean name. It's not grief. Exactly. It's not depression. Exactly. It's the feeling of waking up one day and realizing that the person you thought you were the one with the plan, the one holding it together, the one who knew what they wanted, has quietly stopped existing. And in their place is nothing. Just a hollow space where the self you used to be. You don't tell people about this, because how do you explain that you're not sad about something? You're sad about everything. And also, somehow, nothing. So you do what most people do. You call it burnout. You call it a rough patch. You tell yourself you just need rest. And underneath all of that, quietly, you believe something darker. That you are breaking down. That this is what falling apart looks like. That you are losing. Carl Jung would tell you that you have misread everything. There are 7 signs that you are not collapsing. You are completing something. Asterisk. Here is what no one tells you about the coping strategies you have built over a lifetime. They were never solving the problem. They were managing the distance between you and the problem. Work you couldn't stop doing. Relationships you stayed in too long. The drink, the scroll, the obsessive planning, the constant motion. None of it was healing anything. It was keeping something at bay. And for a while, that was enough. Then it stopped working. Not gradually, not in a way you could negotiate with. One day, the thing that always took the edge off simply didn't. You went back to the well and it was dry. You tried harder and felt worse. Jung would say, the psyche engineered this deliberately. The unconscious is not passive. It does not sit quietly while you outrun it. When the gap between who you are performing and who you actually are becomes too wide, the psyche begins dismantling the infrastructure that maintains that gap. It breaks the tools, not as punishment, but as demand. A demand that you finally stop managing the distance and close it. The collapse of your coping mechanisms is not a sign that you are getting worse. It is a sign that the old method of surviving has been revoked because something in you requires more than survival now. Asterisk. The things you buried are coming back. The anger you decided wasn't acceptable. The grief you never finished. The version of yourself you are ashamed of, the needy one. The furious one. The one who wanted things you convinced yourself you didn't want. They surface through dreams you can't shake. Through reactions that feel disproportionate. Through a creeping sense that you are becoming someone you don't recognize. You call it losing control. Jung called it the shadow, returning for integration. The shadow is not your worst self. It is every part of yourself you decided was unacceptable and pushed below the surface. It does not disappear when you reject it. It accumulates, and at a certain point in transformation, the psyche refuses to keep it submerged any longer. What emerges feels like chaos. What it actually is the rest of you demanding to be included. Jung wrote that the man who looks outward dreams, the man who looks inward awakens. This is what inward looks like in practice. Not peaceful, not enlightened, messy, destabilizing, and deeply uncomfortable, because you are being forced to see what you spend years learning not to see. You are not unraveling. You are in the early stage of becoming whole. Asterisk. The self you are trying to protect does not exist the way you think it does. The self is not a thing. It is a process. A rivish, not a rock. Every identity, every story about who you are is a convention imposed on something that was never fixed to begin with. You are not the same person you were 10 years ago, not just philosophically, biochemically, psychologically, structurally. The body you inhabit has replaced nearly every cell. The beliefs you held have shifted. The things that frightened you have changed. And yet you carry this feeling of being a continuous, coherent self that has simply moved through time unchanged. That feeling is the convention. The change was the reality all along. When you identify completely with a fixed version of yourself, its dissolution feels like death. It is not death. It is the river moving. The person who says, "I have always been this way," is not reporting a fact. They are maintaining a story. They are taking something fluid and dynamic and insisting it stays still. A self that is not fixed cannot be permanently broken, cannot be permanently trapped. The dissolution of who you were is the only door to who you are becoming. Asterisk. At a certain point in this process, the psyche stops waiting for you to listen consciously. It begins speaking in a language. Most people have forgotten how to read. Your dreams have changed. They are vivid in a way that feels different from ordinary. Dreaming. Specific. Strange. Images that stay with you long after you wake. Scenes that feel weighted with meaning you cannot immediately explain. This is not random noise. Jung spent decades studying this. He believed the dream was the unconscious processing what consciousness refuses to face, not encoding hidden messages, but doing real psychological work while the defenses are down. He kept obsessive records during his own descent. He called it the work. You don't need to interpret every dream. You need to write them down. Immediately. Not a summary. The images. Their feeling. The specific detail that seemed wrong or significant. Patterns will emerge over days and weeks that are invisible in a single dream. The psyche is building a case. Your job is to be its witness. Asterisk. The coincidences have been happening too often. You think of someone and they call, you reach a breaking point, and the exact book, conversation, or stranger appears with the exact thing you needed to hear. You make a decision in the dark, and the world rearranges itself around that decision in ways that feel impossible to explain. You have been calling it coincidence because coincidence is the only word available. Jung gave it a different name. Synchronicity. Not magic. Not the universe rewarding you. Jung defined it as the meaningful coincidence of an inner event and an outer one. Two things with no causal connection, but unmistakable significance. When they meet, what he observed across decades of clinical work was that synchronicities clustered around. Moments of deep psychological transformation. The next time it happens, and it will write it down. Not to decode it, just to register that something is moving in you large enough to leave marks on the world around you. Asterisk, at some point during this process, you stop showing up the way you used to. Canceled plans, messages left unanswered. A withdrawal from people who couldn't understand what was happening, which was everyone, because you couldn't explain it yourself. And you have probably told yourself you're being antisocial, or depressed, or that you should force yourself back out there. Before you disappear completely, Jung would tell you to stop forcing it. The withdrawal is not avoidance. It is incubation. There is a specific kind of internal work that cannot happen in noise, that gets interrupted by the presence of other people's needs, other people's energy, other people's versions of who you are supposed to be. Depression empties you. This kind of solitude fills you slowly, invisibly, in ways you won't be able to measure until the process is complete. If the withdrawal feels necessary, even when it frightens you, trust the necessity. The self that is emergent needs the quiet to take shape. Asterisk, there is something in you that is dying. You know this, not because someone told you, not because you read it somewhere, but because you can feel it. The way you can feel a season changing before the temperature actually drops. Something that used to be central to who you are has gone quiet in a way that feels permanent. And the strangest part, the part you haven't said out loud to anyone, is that somewhere underneath the terror, you know it needs to go. That knowing is the seventh sign, and it is the most important one. Most of the pain in this process comes not from the dying itself, but from the resistance to it. The ego does not surrender quietly. It generates narratives about why you cannot let go, why this particular thing must be preserved, why losing this part of yourself would mean losing everything. It mistakes the structure for the person. Jung watched this pattern repeat across every patient who came to him mid-transformation. The ones who suffered longest were not the ones whose lives had fallen apart most severely. They were the ones who kept trying to put the same structure back together. The death of your identity is not a catastrophe. It is a passage. Here is the hardest truth of everything you've just heard. Most people who live through what you are living through right now did not make it to the other side. Not because they weren't capable, not because the transformation wasn't real, but because they reached this exact point exhausted, disoriented, carrying the weight of a self that had already died but not yet been replaced, and they chose the exit. They rebuilt the old structure. They went back. Jung called it the great tragedy of the unfinished process, the agony without the integration, the death without the rebirth. You are not obligated to repeat that pattern. The self that is emerging from this process is not the self you lost. It is not a better version of the self you lost. It is something that could not have existed before the loss. Tonight, before you sleep, write down one thing that has been true about this period that you have not allowed yourself to say out loud. One sentence, unpolished, just the fact, witnessed by you. That is where the real work begins. The dawn is not announced. Itahivis.